The Olympic Games are hiding a dark secret they never want you to discover. The real story behind these athletes and workers is more shocking than any medal count. You need to stick around until the end to uncover the one death that officials tried to cover up for decades. It began not in a stadium or an arena, but high above a half-built roof in the burning heart of Athens. The year was 2004. Greece was racing against time to welcome the world back to the birthplace of the Olympic flame. But before the cheers, before the torch, there was silence broken only by the echo of metal, wind, and exhaustion. Demetris Antonopoulos, a 45-year-old worker, was suspended on steel beams, tightening bolts and placing lights for the grand stadium that would soon shine under millions of eyes. He was just another man working another shift. Then, a cable snapped, and in a heartbeat, he fell 100 feet through empty air. There was no crowd to scream, no cameras to capture his fall. Just a man and gravity, and the unfinished dream of a nation desperate to impress the world. When the news reached the ground, it was met not with outrage, but with resignation. There were deadlines, and the clock would not stop. Another man, Nikos Georgiou, died days later when a crane collapsed while lifting steel meant to crown the aquatic center. The machine had been pushed beyond its limit, its base sinking into unprepared ground. The weight of pressure, corporate, political, national, crushed him before the steel ever did. By the time the Athens Games opened that August, at least 4 men had died building the Olympic vision. Their names weren't read at the ceremony. They were never remembered by the crowd, though their work held up the lights that bathed the champions. A decade later, in Rio de Janeiro, history repeated itself. The world saw beaches, colors, samba, and glory. What it didn't see were the men buried beneath concrete and steel before the celebration even began. Anderson de Silva Santos, a laborer at Olympic Park, was installing concrete molds when a 440 zero-pound crane came crashing down in a storm. The wind had been too strong for work, but deadlines spoke louder than warning. The machine twisted, fell, and unalived him instantly. A year later, Fabio, Luis Pereira, and Ronaldo Oliveira dos Santos were crushed under the roof of a stadium meant to host thousands. And when a seaside bicycle path built for Olympic cyclists collapsed into the ocean, 2 more were swept away by the waves. 11 lives lost in silence, 11 dreams erased so the show could go on. The medals were counted, the bodies were not. But the story of Olympic tragedy stretches far beyond scaffolds and cranes. It runs deep through a century of ambition, through the blood and sweat of men who believed that to compete was to live forever. One of them was Francisco Lazaro, a 21-year-old Portuguese carpenter who stood under the blazing Stockholm sun in 1912 preparing for the Olympic marathon. He had never felt heat like this before. Temperatures neared 90 degrees Fahrenheit, a furnace on the open road. Believing he could outwit the sun, Lazaro coated his body in wax and animal fat, hoping to shield his skin. What he didn't know was that he had sealed his pores, trapping his body heat inside like a fire with no escape. He ran with courage and confusion, his breath turning shallow, his legs heavy, his skin pale beneath the sheen of wax. By the 18th mile, his body could no longer cool itself. Spectators watched as he staggered and fell, his heart racing beyond recovery. When they lifted him from the road, his skin burned with fever, though his body looked cold. He was rushed to Horrifying Hospital, but by morning, Francisco Lazaro was gone, the first athlete to die in Olympic competition. His death changed the rules of marathons forever. But in 1912, there were no headlines of blame. Only the cruel poetry of a man who tried to outrun the Sunday. Nearly 50 years later, the torch burned again, this time in Rome, 1960, where Knud Enemark Jensen, a young Danish cyclist, pedaled through unbearable heat. He had taken a drug called Roniacol, believed to help blood flow, a stimulant that promised endurance and glory. It was legal, encouraged even, but under 104-degree heat, his body became a pressure chamber. At the 54-mile mark, he began to sway. His teammates thought he was just tired. Minutes later, he collapsed on the asphalt, his body convulsing in the heat. His pulse slowed, then stopped. Doctors fought to bring him back, but it was too late. The post-mortem revealed the truth. It wasn't just the heat that unalived him. It was science turned against the body it sought to empower. His death forced the world to ask what athletes were becoming men of discipline or subjects of experiment. Then came Innsbruck, 1964. where 19-year-old Ross Milne from Australia faced the most dangerous mountain descent of his young life. The air was razor cold, the snow hard as stone. He was fast, faster than most believed possible for a boy from Sydney, where snow was more myth than memory. The course at Patricoffel Mountain demanded perfection. One mistake meant destruction. As Milne cut through a sharp turn, something, maybe ice, maybe instinct, betrayed him. His skis caught edge, his balance broke, and he was thrown from the racing line. The force met him before he could recover. The impact was worst, that time itself seemed to stop. Ski patrols arrived within minutes, but they could do nothing. Milne died chasing a dream that had never known his name. His death forced the Olympics to change how courses were designed, but no safety net could ever catch the silence he left behind. Decades later, in Albertville, 1992, another man would meet fate on the snow. Nicolas Bochete, a 27-year-old Swiss speed skier, was not even racing for a medal that day. It was a demonstration event, a showcase of speed, not competition. He set off casually, gliding across the slope with grace. But in the middle of his run, a snow grooming machine appeared on the hill, massive, unmoving, unavoidable. Bochete didn't see it until it was too late. He struck the machine at over 100 miles per hour. There was no scream, no second chance. His body crumpled under the force, his skis splintered, and his dream dissolved in snow. His death was so sudden that even rescue teams hesitated to believe it was real. Within hours, speed skiing as an Olympic sport was gone, erased from the future, as if to erase the memory of his fall. And then came Vancouver, 2010, the day when the coldest sport became the most haunting. Nodar Kumaritashvili, a young Georgian luger, had trained all his life for this. His father and uncle had both been Olympians, and now it was his turn. The Whistler Sliding Center was known as the fastest, most lethal track ever built. Speeds over 90 miles per hour, corners sharper than reason, walls lined with steel and ice. Many had already crashed in training, but the event continued. On his final practice run, Nodar lay flat on his sled, every muscle tuned for precision. The first corners passed in control, smooth, perfect. But as he approached turn 15, everything changed. His sled drifted wide, just inches too far. He tried to correct, but the reaction came too late. The sled moved up the wall, launching him into open air at 87 miles per hour. He struck a steel pillar with catastrophic force. The world saw it live. His helmet shattered. He passed away before the games even began. When the opening ceremony started hours later, the Olympic flame burned bright, but behind every cheer, the world mourned a son who would never march in that parade. The track was modified, walls raised, speeds reduced, but the truth lingered. He had died to remind the world that even in modern times, the pursuit of perfection still claims the innocent. From Francisco Lazaro in Stockholm to Nodar Kumaritashvili in Vancouver, from the mountains of Innsbruck to the rooftops of Athens, every story bears the same echo that glory and tragedy are twins born of the same flame. The Olympics are built to celebrate life, strength, and unity. But in their shadow lies the cost of greatness. For every gold medalist who stands above the crowd, there are unseen souls buried beneath the track, the snow, and the steel. As the torch moves from one city to the next, it carries not just light, but memory. Memory of those who gave everything for a moment they would never see. And so, as the world applauds its heroes, let it also remember its ghosts. Because the Olympic flame may symbolize hope and endurance, but its glow is forever fed by the lives that burned before it. So now you know the untold costs of the Olympic Games. I want to know which story you found the most tragic. Tell me if you believe the Games should continue knowing this history. Share your own thoughts on the price of global spectacle in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Make sure to follow for more true stories they never taught you.